Right up front.
AV guy, you got the floor. So, how's it going? For those of you who haven't met me, I am Mike Ekert. I'm a grad student at Trent University. But I'm also representing the College and Global Change Group, which is the lab I'm a part of. I work for Dr. Tanentzap, and then also with Dr. Summerstar, who's my partner. They've been handling most of the high-end analysis of all the water and the fish samples, and then I'm kind of the community liaison, and then also helping guide through. It's a very scientific-centered lab, and I'm a sustainability studies guy, so I've been kind of guiding through how to incorporate community input and not just analyze water and then move on.
I was just going to present myself. I'm Billy Longchap. I work for Advantage Engineering and just helping out with the water quality and fish monitoring project. And there's some other people joining here at the meeting, and the meeting is being recorded so we can post, or whatever we may do with it. So there's Sarah Roach, project manager for Advantage Engineering, and Andrew, how do you say it? Tanentzap from Trent as well. And if KED guys, I know you guys all know them, but introductions for the recording. Eddie
and President Chucky.
Okay, right. All right, we can move on. Good.
So there's two main projects that we're running. It's water quality monitoring and fish sampling updates. Our focuses up until this point have been to establish the health of the ecosystem in general. So is the water healthy or the fish inside the water healthy? Mostly focused on the reservoir.
Just go. Sorry. Yeah, I guess up there is good. All right, go on.
So our main focus is, unlike most other research projects that we're a part of, the main focus is what you guys want out of the research. This is community-centered research driven by you guys to determine what the community is after. It's incorporating basic water chemistry, fish monitoring. We've been receiving some fish samples to run for mercury and arsenic, as well as what's starting to initiate this week is a traditional ecological knowledge gathering, meant to make kind of like a library for the community of all previous ecological knowledge. And then also that will help drive our environmental looks, based on what the community is seeing over the decades and decades.
Cool.
Yeah, so water quality monitoring, total algae, total mercury, dissolved oxygen content. There's a million parameters that go in the water. For the most part, I can confidently say that overall, the water in the reservoir is better than most of the places in Quebec, most of the places in Canada that we've sampled, and especially most of the places in the States. The mercury content within the water is nothing crazy or concerning. It's present, and it's likely due to the erosion the dam causes. Mercury is present in the soil. It's likely kind of accumulating in the water through that. But the mercury in the water isn't the risk. The risk that we're looking into is bioaccumulation within the fish, explicitly walleye and pike, any kind of ambush predator style fish. As they eat other fish and eat other things that are in this very low level mercury water, they will accumulate mercury inside them. Right now, we're not seeing any massive concerns. It's something we want to keep digging into and looking at. I will say that it's comparable to cigarettes at this point, except way better from what we've been seeing. But we're looking to get an actual full study on how many fish and how often is this risk starting to exist. But right now, I don't think there's any drive to reduce fish consumption or cause any kind of changes in community behavior until we do a better analysis of it. But that's the only problem that we've detected out of all of our water measurements so far, is the potential for mercury bioaccumulation. I can get into specific numbers if anybody's interested in that. Any other questions on what we've been doing? We've installed some water level loggers and monitors. So far, the first year has been kind of a broad scope. What's the environment like? And now that we're identifying some areas of potential concern, we're trying to drill into those.
Nice. Does anybody have any questions on that specifically? Or
long-term accumulation is what I'm worried about. We're not worried about the time being. We're not worried about the present. We're worried about the future. now in long-term accumulation, because you're saying hydro, it's because of hydro that's, you know, the up and down of the reservoir is causing the presence of methylmercury, right?
Most likely, we can't confirm if it's explicitly Hydro-Québec or if it's coming upstream on the watershed, but our best guess would be likely due to erosion based on numbers we're seeing.
So, and that is caused by hydro.
Yes, that would be possible.
Now, if we were to go against hydro on this matter, would you be willing to put your stamp on it?
At this point, we cannot, beyond a shadow of a doubt, scientifically prove it's hydro. The leading theory, though, is it's hydro. I'd like to do more research and look more into it before we can definitively state.
My question again, long-term presence of methylmercury in fish, what does that do to the community members that eat fish long-term?
Yes, that is a thing that we're looking on.
Brian, do you want me to jump in?
Our top priority. Right now, we are discussing levels that like could be a risk for children and the pregnant. Could be is emphasized. We don't have any evidence. We only have 5 fish that we sampled. That's suggesting that mercury is a huge community concern. It's something to be aware of, much like any other environmental impacts. As we do more study, we'll know better about it. But right now, if mercury is a concern, the recommendation that we would offer is to reduce consumption of especially large, old walleye and pike, especially for the young and the pregnant.
Brian,
It's like a thing that you should stop eating fish immediately. A really good metric is Health Canada puts out stuff for shark and tuna. Most conservative approach would be to look at those guidances and apply that to walleye and pike, but I think even that's too conservative until we get further study on it.
Okay, just on that subject. Oh,
and this Kenozes Netema Muyo gas Minatuno, and then I just now book mercury. I don't chicken the mini yaki this mercury that's good.
Don't.
So
You don't.
She wants to
You
know,
don't.
how do you know fish accumulate mercury?
So we know that fish accumulate mercury based on the fact that we know there's low-level mercury within the environment, within the reservoir. That isn't dangerous just at its water level, but as things live in the water, as things eat things that live in the water, that mercury will get concentrated the farther up the food chain you go.
No, she's asking, how do you tell if the fish has mercury?
Without advanced scientific equipment, I wouldn't be able to confidently say if there's any one way to be like, this fish has a lot of mercury in it, based on like look or based on things that are available to the community. You can guess though that fish that ambush predators that eat other fish specifically are going to accumulate more mercury, and the older that fish is, the more mercury it has accumulated. So like smaller fish are going to be better, and then also I'm trying to remember
sucker sturgeon.
Yeah, sucker sturgeon, anything that's not explicitly a predator fish, there's almost no mercury concern with. We're just talking about the higher end of the food chain, fish that predate other fish, and then fish that live a long time predating other fish. Does that make sense? I can answer.
Well, but like you said, sturgeon, they live long. What does that do to that?
I don't know quite the difference between a sturgeon that's not like pike, where it's eating a lot of other fish. They do live a long time. We would have to look at the sturgeon meat and get samples to really compare it.
And that's a possibility too.
What about the other? Are you gonna speak about the other stuff that was found? or what?
Do you want me to tell them?
Yeah.
This is is there any way it's just to note if there's any other contaminants in the water? It's just like the hydro sprays on the dams.
So we've looked into that and we've managed to quantify our initial results where we could detect some herbicides or basically weed killer that Hydro-Québec is using, as well as some other stuff. None of it is in a quantity that should affect anybody here based on what we've detected. I'm looking to get more water collect a liter this time of the reservoir and then run some more targeted tests for explicitly stuff that we found. But everything we've run quantifying it or like figuring out how much is in the water has been well below human safety and concern.
But what I'm worried about is it's still there. You know what I mean?
Yes.
How can you stop it from being there?
That is very difficult.
Mercury, I will end this one. I'm going to keep what I did after the Mercury. I will name there, yeah, man. Name, and then now you got to see
Says what? Let's say if I ingest a fish that has mercury, what would be the symptoms of me having mercury in my system?
So I'm not a medical doctor. It's very hard for me to answer human medical questions. I can state that for almost every normal adult, the levels of mercury that we've detected should not be like a factor outside of very long-term potential cancer risks. We're talking over 20, like 40 years. I would highly recommend getting any kind of clinic or whatever else serves the community involved on this now that we have mercury numbers. MDs and medical professionals might be able to better assess this, but we're also looking to continue to receive fish samples, continue to run studies, and get a much firmer answer on like, hey, we can tell you for sure this many fish is safe or this many fish isn't safe. We've only gotten 5 fish and we've only just detected this problem, but nothing is an immediate health concern. Long term, it may be, which is why I want to keep looking at it.
Mercury will affect people.
Maybe explain what mercury is.
Yeah, mercury is.
I don't know if it's in-
Oh, please.
Okay, I found this on
That
the
may
web.
have mercury, it's put that down, wouldn't it? They must be good now, that came in 80s, 20s, that's the mercury and water. Then it's not a pocket current, it takes like no fish now, they get that to when they back then. It's from this system, I think we're switching. Gene took me over, I've seen this man, and it's that between a little bit, like I come up and all, but I think you get it, they've been able to see it, come over, the kids that they got when a pretty guy, I mean, like the more again. Me, my guy, don't know what, I said, you would a quick test guy, I'm not going to do. Miss Connie cut those, the boy, he got a, you can be seen another ass, the guy, I'm not going to what I think I like.
Mercury is a lot of times this is what happens. It doesn't affect the person directly. This is what it affects. It affects the development of people, like young kids growing up, or a baby growing in somebody's stomach. It hinders development. It causes chances of causing us diseases, making them more susceptible to stuff like cancer, mental retardation, leukemia. You can get all kinds of other diseases later on in life because of your development. That's what mercury affects.
We just want to say the
Mercury comes from it's in the sand. It's naturally in the sand. But what happens is when the bank erodes, when it keeps falling in the water, every time they make waves, this is in the water, it goes into more sand goes into the water. That's what causes mercury contamination. That's what builds up the levels of mercury. It's the same thing as when they cut the bush. And you know, when they scrape the ground, this is for tree plantation. They clean all the ground. It says that brings the mercury to the surface so that it goes away. This is when it rains, it washes into the streams and rivers and accumulates in the lakes. And it's the same thing with fish. The bigger a fish gets, it says the more mercury it has in it. But so you can avoid mercury contamination. This is eating fish by not eating the stomach. The mercury has a tendency to line in the stomach area of the fish. Now, my girlfriend did tests on. She's a biologist that specializes in methylmercury and the effects it has on reproduction. This is, and that's where it's more concerning. It's going to affect the next generation.
Everything I have to say about that is exactly but.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, what causes the erosion? right now.
Right now, the erosion is most likely connected to the dam activity.
Exactly. Me say Azigdan. That's what I'm saying. Mima eu de seca e the Nini the email de seca e the Mercury because they closed the dam and let the water go up. What happens what after? What you see is erosion everywhere. It's not just here, it's all over the place.
I think member here of the meeting, Andrew from Trent, has something to mention. Can you guys hear if he talks? Andrew?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Can't hear him.
It's hard to hear.
I can't even hear him.
Oh, no, it's the wrong microphone. Can you hear me okay now?
I think that's the best we're probably going to get.
Okay. So I'm sorry I'm not there in person today. I was planning to be. I planned my whole month around this event to be there to answer your questions, but I came down with a fever on the weekend and I still had it yesterday, and so I thought it'd be safest to not be there. But I want to try and clarify some of the points that were made and answer some of the questions you've had. So I've taken a few notes of things I just want to clarify. With the mercury in the fish that we've measured, so this is mercury that we've measured in the fillets. Okay, so it's not in the whole fish, it's not in the stomach. This would be if you fillet the fish, this is the muscle. The concentrations are nothing necessarily alarming, so they're very typical of what you'd find across the whole country, basically. And the levels in the larger fish are above Health Canada guidelines, but that's not necessary. That doesn't necessarily mean you shouldn't be consuming the fish. Would I consume these fish? I eat walleye from Northern Ontario as often as I can. I think there's a concern here about consumption. If it's not necessarily having it occasionally that's a problem. It would be the regular consumption where mercury basically accumulates in your body, and it accumulates more quickly than it's lost from your body. And so that's the problem, is that over time, really high levels of consumption can accumulate mercury in the body. Will that lead to health effects long term? It's actually really difficult to say. It's going to depend a lot on just how much fish is being consumed, how much other, there's potentially mercury in other country foods. And so how much of that is consumed is going to determine the mercury burden. Now, there's a really important point here that I want to make, which is that no one here is saying not to consume fish. And of course, what are the alternatives? They may not be, and probably are not better, so not consuming fish in favor of like more Western processed foods is not necessarily going to lead to better health outcomes either. So that's a really important point that I want to make sure comes across. In terms of where the mercury is coming from, I don't know if we can, we cannot attribute it to Hydro-Québec. I don't know how important erosion is either. So erosion might bring mercury. So mercury exists in different forms in the environment. Some of it is completely inert. So it's like rock. It doesn't react and it doesn't harm people or animals. But there are bacteria that can take that form of mercury and they can turn it into methylmercury, which is the really toxic form that accumulates in living things. And methylmercury, the bacteria that drive that process, they tend to work best in sediments and in conditions where there's low oxygen availability. So this is where the hydro operations have a role to play, because they're manipulating the water levels in the reservoir that then influence the availability of oxygen in the water and in the sediments that then determines if the microorganisms can create the really bad mercury. So this is where monitoring of the water levels that we're doing in the reservoir becomes really important. And then the last thing that I was going to just kind of add to what I've heard so far is how do you know fish have mercury? The best predictor is size. So just like in people, fish, like I said, they accumulate mercury more quickly than it's released from their body. So an older fish, larger fish will have more mercury. So especially if you're eating, small walleye, and we can probably give some guidance on sizes, the mercury might not even be a concern at all. The concentrations would be really low. So I think that the quickest answer there is size is your best indicator of mercury risk in fish. So sticking to small fish may not be a problem. And again, based on all the data we've collected in water quality and in the fish, I have not seen anything concerning or atypical in your territory compared to pretty much anywhere else in Canada. Nothing jumped out at us as an immediate concern for your health. I don't know if you heard all of that. Okay, Billy.
Yeah. How did we hear that? Is that good?
I'm
Clear?
still
Yeah.
worried.
Is what's his name again?
Andrew.
Andrew? You realize people eat fish here without having fishing seasons?
Yep.
And you use nets.
Get the bigger ones in the nets.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to kind of piggyback off of what Dr. Tanentzap said, we are not saying that there's no problem, we're done looking at it. There's obviously things to continue to research, and there's better information that we can get for you. Right now, what we mostly want to get across is there's no fire, there's no huge alarm. We haven't seen anything that's really bad or really concerning. There's obvious things that can have long-term health effects that shouldn't be ignored, but it's going to take a little bit more time for us to get really firm answers. We need to know how much fish the community consumes on average, and we need probably a few more fish to run tests on. And we've only really looked at walleye, but there's other fish to consider. Also, maybe some moose samples or some beaver and muskrat samples may also be useful to see how that mercury is spreading up the food chain.
The other thing that can be done is that I'm just putting this out there. I'm not suggesting we do it, and our lab isn't really equipped to do this anyways, but you can measure mercury in yourselves just with hair. So just a small piece of hair can measure mercury in humans. And so, if that is a big concern, then that might be something worth thinking about.
So did you guys hear that about the hair? You can.
We didn't need as much, not to.
So you can use hair to tell how
A
much.
little bit of hair,
That's not
very much.
new in our environmental science world, but medically that is a way to test for mercury exposure within a population for a person. Yeah.
So what you're saying is that we can't do nothing about methylmercury or where it comes from.
So I think, we could look more into the role of the water level fluctuations in the dam as contributing to the methylmercury production. And that might be, of course. So then you can do some, potentially if we find a link to the water level regulation, and there's been actually a lot of research in Quebec already on hydroelectric reservoirs and methylmercury production, because this is an issue elsewhere where Hydro-Québec has been operating, then potentially, you could influence the operations of the dam. But I guess what I'm saying is kind of to what end? Because the methylmercury concentrations aren't necessarily alarming that you have in your fish, especially if you're, mainly consuming smaller fish. And I appreciate the point that there's consumption year round, but whether it's something you're not going to be able to completely eliminate it, to be be clear on that because the dam is not going to be the only source of it. Mercury is also deposited in the atmosphere from rain. It's carried in pollution, in smog, and it's deposited everywhere. So you can't eliminate it entirely. You can reduce the concentrations in fish, but your concentrations are not necessarily alarming either. Could they be lower? Yeah, sure. And are they necessarily causing some of the health concerns that I know have been raised in the community? It's very difficult to say anything about that based on what we do, but there isn't a smoking gun here saying that methylmercury is causing rare cancers in the community. Nothing that we've seen based on the concentrations of methylmercury would suggest that's the case.
Okay. You got anything to say on that, or Mike?
Yeah, to just so my first focus concerning this topic is to figure out general safety guidelines concerning the fish that may not even be substantially different than what the current normal community patterns with fish are. We need more fish, more study to do that. Following getting that answer of this is what we know is safe. I am very interested in doing an erosion study on the reservoir. And if we can get a better study on that, we may be able to more closely link the methylmercury with Hydro-Québec. Even if we draw that link, though, I don't know legally how much recourse exists, but more study is valuable for sure. And being able to demonstrate that the dam behavior is causing an uptake in methylmercury is still very valuable.
Yeah, and just to say that we're going into year 2 of this water and fish monitoring program. And so, new things can be added whenever it's all in the budget. We can all talk about that. I think some of the data points that you guys are concerned about are covered in further slides. And so if we can continue with the slideshow, maybe that'll show some numbers. And
Sorry if I derailed.
No, it's good. I think it's good dialogue, But yeah, if everybody's ready, we can keep going.
Is that study done all year round or just the summer?
Which study specifically?
I mean, the fish they tested.
It's mostly from the summer, but we've been doing year round. As the community identifies fish that look sick or look like they have problems, they can send them to us. With that, it's mostly been dermal sarcoma, sandy flesh based on looks. And then we've been testing for mercury and arsenic. Arsenic doesn't seem to be a factor in the fish at all, based on our initial testing. Mercury, as we discussed, there's space for additional research in that for sure. But that is a year-round project.
I am hydro-québec. Când kana strategie aí, que não na nit, das Spitze ja, je schon eigentlich zu etwas nanuk, sage ich mit hat, mir die Beschrick, mir was nach gon, schnoga, das nur kad aqui é de rodam que give na sorts on the lake. It's me got that now when in the stomach. You pull with me when you got a web na sorts. Iman bikak, idashon di kibus nega ba madge, mishe nega mosh guna kibus, di kita dike gewe. Kana, how to live on bona stone or whatever what, idashon. Sort mining is the second government involved or it's money mining. What did he that the sun the bikak.
Oi, quando na que na minha gote ada estava de moço. Eu digo que a semana que mentava. Eu vou dar a neutral. Minha galera do fogo, mas não o lado você. Eu espero muito lá. É no lugar onde estou. Mas eu vou no mar e eu vou no bico. Acho que eu na madzinha. Eu digo a netman eu digo que ele na digo que tem no mapa. Meu de madzinha garoto.
Jede so se minni. Jetzt ja mitten do the nanny bingo zan. Neton ni mayo se man wedi that mercury to simaga tik. Is quando se hek dat gizagi gus neton atek dwini ma mercury shich. Jamo this.
She's asking, if mercury is in the water and she boils the water, does that mean, kills the mercury? And also, she's saying, well, if it does, then I cook the fish. How come that doesn't kill mercury?
Boiling the water will not remove mercury from the water. The water that, or the amount of mercury that's in the reservoir right now is not dangerous for human consumption based on what we've analyzed. But if you boil the water, the mercury's still in the water. You need to filter the water. So the only way to get mercury out of the fish would be to filter the fish, which is not the thing that you can do.
Pretty good answer. Yeah. I think. Was there any other concerns or?
Oh, I'm just, the one I'm concerned about is the other part that's in, what was found in the water is the herbicide.
Mhm.
I still think, is there any idea where it's coming from? I know where it's coming from. Can we say it's coming from, again, it's Hydro-Québec that's spraying these herbicides at 3 places. It could be more. They're spraying at the Bourrier Dam. They're spraying at the Mileage?
7 Mile Bay.
7 Mile Bay
And then Tabanga.
and then Kabanga. I don't know if there's any other places they're spraying, but it's why is what I guess it what amount, I guess they must be using lots if you're finding wherever the water you tested. Was it from here? Was it from different places?
It was basically all the water we tested from just off the community shore around it. So like the problem is what we use to detect these weed killers basically can detect just any molecule of that weed killer. So our initial reports of like, oh, hey, this is in the water, it was detecting very, very trace amounts, like almost non-existent amounts of those molecules. Once we were able to quantify those results and look at how much is actually in the water, we're not seeing any risk with herbicide for like human consumption or health to the lake. Is that tied to Hydro-Québec? My guess would be almost 100%. You'd have to be able to prove that. And if you're interested in proving the herbicide connection to Hydro-Québec, we would need to probably do soil and water sampling around the dam explicitly, looking for that explicitly. Even if we find it, the government of Canada mostly identifies that herbicide as safe to use. I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't know what legal recourse we could do.
But what is, again, that type of herbicide, I mean, for us, it's long-term exposure. For us, it's long-term, you have these, non-native that come fish, once a year, so their exposure is minimal. Well, when you live here, I mean, the exposure is at 24/7.
Yeah, which is why we're very interested in really nailing down how much fish is okay based on the current work results. As far as the herbicide or weed killer, at the rates that we've detected it, we're not seeing any, we're not medical doctors, so I can't say for sure, but we're not seeing anything that would have any human health effects for those substances because they're in such trace amounts. A good metaphor is it's one blade of grass in an entire field. And it's there. We know it's probably there from Hydro-Québec, but nothing we're seeing yet is like this is a health concern for the community. It could be, which is why we've not stopped testing on it. But everything we've seen so far has been like
Long-term exposure. Again, I'm just going to keep coming to that. Long-term is the risk.
Can I jump in? So I agree with the long-term exposure. And one of the things that we're doing that I think we don't have the results yet is one of these pesticides, we're actually measuring it in the fish now. So we're in the process of checking in the fish. So it's possible that these things could accumulate in fish, and that would be the exposure. In terms of the exposure pathways from water and drinking water, I think the concentrations are far too low. So the long-term exposure would probably have to come through food sources and accumulation in fish, and that's what we hope in a few weeks to have a clear answer on.
Okay, now for an individual, what is a safe consumption in fish? Let's say I eat 10 fish. Let's say if I eat 10 fish a year, is that safe? Like, what is the guideline here in terms of, because somebody mentioned a guideline, some will eat 40 fish in one season. You know, you're looking at because you know a lot of people eat a lot of fish.
So the guidelines are going to depend.
Yeah.
A lot of it is going to have to do with metabolism, right? So it's going to depend how old you are. It's going to depend how fat you are. It's going to depend on what size of fish you eat. So in terms of guidelines, we can't give those guidelines. I'm not even sure if those guidelines exist because they're going to be so specific to individuals. And then I think as well, there's a really important point that I'll make again. What's the alternative to fish? Is that necessarily a healthier option? That's also something that needs to be thought about.
Because fish is almost like, you know, it's one of the main food that we eat besides moose. Oh, yeah, that's a hard one.
So like me specifically, we're aware, like if this was Dorset in Ontario, the mercury levels wouldn't even be like a note to talk about. And that's based on like eating fish like once a year or like a couple times a month. It could be a concern here, which is why we want to continue to study it and continue to look into it. We want to take it seriously because fish is such a big piece of the community's diet. But we can emphatically say that if the choice is like malnutrition or eating the fish as we see them right now, the fish is way healthier than like not eating. Number of fish to what rate, we need to do more study to be able to tell you like clearly. And even that is going to be a recommendation from our end. An actual guideline would have to come from human medical professionals, but we can give recommendations to help.
But we can't give recommendations. That's not what we do. We can direct to those recommendations that are produced by healthcare professionals. That's just not us, right? But there are guidelines that, again, like I said, it's based on body weight and how much you consume. The guidelines are based on body weight because it's going to depend, and age.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah. Well, anything to do with the one that's a predator fish, That's good. Canoe, walleye, what else? Perch. Yeah. They haven't done it yet. Only the fish so far. But
As how many years ago, what did you guys have where you was? Good years, over 20 years. Yeah, but keep the mad as the men keep the one and the course. No, this is a that was the
but it's you have to look at the there is side effects if you don't see it, there is side effects in the community, I would think. then the kids kakos yachts with seizures. That could be one. That could be linked to that. But we don't know. That's good. So yeah, open what's go a kid. That could be linked to that. It could be linked to many things.
And if you open a book, you wish it's one see you one open once, but not just 6 to 1 minute in that and then the same. He's not gonna make a good thing here with them.
But you have lots. Did you have lots back then? You have lots here.
And I think the reason why she but we need to do a study was mainly with the hydro dam. Zamay up and down, just you can see, but you are maybe to go just too us to get the ideas is sick, and they're trying to either that could prove it. That's part of it, maybe how Jesus said. Plus, man, this the Kegun, Mama, Danam Kan, now that they got the pesticides, smoke away, Casper, Gadeku, and the hydro dam, Casper, we should begin Kagim Kakimaya, Hydro-Québec gear.
What do you get?
In a way, it's extremely Naika, yeah. And I started the book Bini.
I think that's part of the reason why but then I'm not to have the study. For now, this network was in that they're focusing on the two fish. And if they're going money, goes the one, but mainly I ugas money in. Then after that, maybe they're going to go into a Amakwan, just I don't know. Whatever. Yeah.
It's
Especially like
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like the purpose of this project, the monitoring project, is to get all this type of relevant data for someone who's qualified to make guidelines for, medical or whatever that may be regarding mercury. But Mike and the other biologist's job at Trent is really to collect and interpret the data, right?
Yeah, we can't make any actual medical guidelines or like state firmly. We can check Health Canada guidelines and compare it to the mercury that we're seeing and kind of work off of that. We can run numbers on how much fish are consumed and what the normal health guidelines are. That's what the study we're looking to do, is collect some more fish, see, like out of the 5 fish that we studied, was the one that was elevated a one-off, or is that pretty common amongst those size fish? Look at other species of fish, and then also do kind of a community study on fish consumption within the community and what that looks like. The goal here is not to, like, fish have to be eaten, and we have to make sure the fish are safe to be eaten, and that's really what we're trying to look at, is what's the actual risk. And right now it's low, like it's something to look at, but I wouldn't say there's an emergency at all.
Yeah, and so some of the data is in these slides. I think the next 2 or 3 ones, where you see their total mercury, like we'll be going over the test, like the results from the samples collected. And there's even a map of locations that we've collected samples from. So just going into that, this has been going on for a little bit now. Does anybody want to take a break and I can try to fix the sound, or we can just keep going?
I don't know why.
She's asking if metal cars and whatnot, this is junk in the water, this will affect fish.
Yes. I can't confirm if the mercury is connected to that at all, but especially cars and whatnot, is going to put a bunch of different hydrocarbons and other heavy metals and stuff in the water. That's always bad.
Yeah, it's better.
It says because it says that
Yeah.
there's deposit of metals. This is
No.
Worker campus. They haven't been cleaned up. And she asked that it be cleaned up and they wouldn't allow it.
Okay.
The government wouldn't allow
Just didn't look into that.
Yeah, it's-
I'm gonna write it down.
It's why in the beginning that, what they said is this is community-based. This is community-based, study that, they need the people, the elders to give them the information. Where they want to test, what they want to test and so forth. You know, these guys ain't someone that the government sent. It's, we approached them to hire them to conduct the, studies. And all the information that they gather, ABL owns it. This ain't a government, operation here. So they're not here to scare you. They're just here to listen to you. Your concerns, test what your concerns are, report back to you what their findings.
Well said. And all these numbers in here, you know, that's the truth. That's what comes from the loggers. It's what we've collected so far. And Mike has a lot more to say about it than I do. I'm not a scientist. So do we want to take a break? Keep going?
it. Right now, go up now, you want to continue. Continue.
Continue? Continue? Okay. All right. We're moving on. And I'm sorry about the sound. Like it says it's doing the TV, but it's not. Okay, Mike, are you ready?
Yep.
Let's go next slide real quick. Huh? See what this one is. Oh, we got some monitoring locations here. Yeah.
So as far as the locations, the logger 1 location is going to be really close to the community shoreline. And then we go to logger 2, which is in the center of the reservoir. Logger 3 is going to be down south near a fish spawn that was identified in the inlet. If I had the map, I have.
Logger 1 is on our appetite. Logger 2 is the cage crib. Logger 3 is the goose comes. Logger 4.
Logger 4 is at the Longer Dam.
Logger 3 is at the best.
Crooked Pass? Yeah.
And there will be a logger 5, and that will be at Barrier Dam.
Yeah, so these are some of the.
So you can see them. So the loggers are the little device that measures temperature and pressure, and what it will tell you is it'll constantly read out the water level of the reservoir. So we throw them out once it thaws, and then they sit all spring, all summer, and all fall, and then we recover them before it freezes again. And it'll have a fully mapped out what was the water level doing every 6 hours for that entire time. And so we get a really good idea of like when the water level is dropping, when the dams are opening, and all the dam functionality is also posted. Hydro-Québec has a repository, so we can compare our logger data and their behavior at the dams and start tying those two pieces together.
Cool. Everybody see the loggers? I'll try to get the other thing there. Sorry, it's so hard to see. Okay, yeah. There you go. Keep going.
So this is just an overview of a scientific method or basically the process that we're running. So the first step is we have to collect samples from the field, and we're prioritizing those samples based on community inputs. Where in the reservoir, where around the communities is the biggest interest. We'll collect those samples. Laboratory analysis, I could get really complicated, but we put them in fancy machines, and the machines do fancy things. They can tell you the molecular composition of the samples you put in. We can run for mercury. We've been running for heavy metals. We've been looking at the algae. We've been looking at how much carbon is in the water, and that can inform other stuff. But we do all that analysis, and then we take that spits out probably 90% information that you would never care about your water, but the 10% is the gold that we're looking for, and that goes into fish health assessment, and then that informs the next set of analysis so that we can repeat the process. It's kind of just a circle that runs not endlessly, but a while until we get the data that we want.
Cool. Total algae. Do you want to talk about this? If people have concerns about algae?
Yeah, unless there's really specific concerns. An important note with algae is it's a thing that should kind of always be monitored consistently. What we've gotten so far, though, is there's almost no algae concern. We're interested in looking at algae again in the summer. So the algae blooms are going to come in the spring, summertime. The winter, there's definitely not algae concerns. Our initial testing was towards mid-fall. We saw no algae concern. We would like to test it in the summer just to confirm that. But also, like, you can go years of no algae, no algae, no algae, and then have a bloom. So it's something that should kind of be continuously monitored, but not a thing that I think is a community risk right now.
Algae bloom is what it is, let's say when the ducks migrate, sometimes they bring some of that green stuff that's in the frog pond someplace, and they bring it into the lake, deposit it into the lake, and what happens is it grows in the water. It spreads, and then all of a sudden it has a reaction. This is when the water temperature changes, and it does something different in the water. Remember this is when we were staying in Coconville, one time there, me and Jacob collected a bunch of fish from in front of Handu 11 and 12. The whole bay was full of fish that were floating. Cannot get in the boat, all the fish. That was because ducks landed there. And that algae grew, had time to grow all summer in the bay. And that one bay, which is all the fish, the ones that were small, they suffocated. They didn't have enough oxygen. Just the big fish survived. But all the fish in that bay died and floated to the top. And it's happened in other places in the lake. But we didn't always catch it when it happened. So sometimes it happened. And then I think Muchni told me one time, it happened, towards Washka Bay. But they saw it only after. This is when the animals were cleaning up the fish along the shore.
Yeah, and that's a natural thing that happens, but primarily in areas with more farming, but there's none of that here. So I think the algae that's in the area is kind of just all natural, right? You can't do anything about ducks.
Everything seems to be natural. There doesn't seem to be any risk of algae blooms or any risk to the fish concerning algae. However, with ducks and other things, like, that's not a guarantee forever, but right now it's fine.
Okay. Moving on. Oh, I should have went to this there. That's the average total.
Oh yeah. And all this is saying is this number is roughly what we got. That number doesn't mean anything to anybody unless you really study, but it's a very low number, and that establishes the baseline, and then we should continue to monitor. Just because we have a good number right now doesn't mean we'll always have a good number. But not a risk, I think, for the community to worry about right now.
Usually you'll notice this as you go to a lake like Blue Sea Lake, and you go look at the water off of the dock, you'll see that the algae number is higher because there's more pollution in the water. So the water is green, this has a lot of.
Here's the big one.
Yeah, that's why I told them, the government says they're gonna fine us for carrying minnows, but they don't find the ducks.
Fine with ducks.
I feel like we've gone into mercury pretty heavily, unless anybody wants me to read this. This is just kind of talking
I'll
about.
just go. I think there's numbers here. Yeah, there you go. The average.
Yeah. Basically, like, the average mercury is below Health Canada standards. So, like, in the water, it's safe. The safe limit benchmark is 4, and so you can kind of see, like, the safe is less than 4, and we're at 1.17. So, like, within the water, drinking the water, mercury side, there doesn't seem to be any huge risk. It's that bioaccumulation of fish that we're worried about.
Yeah, and that's across the 4 loggers, right?
Yep.
So all the points you saw on the map.
Basically, the entire reservoir, we've sampled the full perimeter of it, and that's a pretty representational number of it.
Yeah, so that's the number, and 4 is, anyways, we're way below 4. Cool. Dissolved oxygen content, that was related to algae a little bit, but it's it's good.
Yeah.
I think there's the number here too. All right, there you go.
Yeah, so 6.29%, it's a fine number. DOC would be, like, kind of associated with, like, algae. It basically just means that there's something off balance in the water. and that like either algae or something can grow too fast or like suffocate out fish or suffocate out other important parts of the reservoir ecosystem. This is good though. So far, we haven't seen any issues.
9%. And these are all baseline, right? Data collection. It's good to have, and then we can compare in the future. All right. So those are all the numbers, the big ones we talked about.
Yep. So algae, fine, but continue to monitor. Mercury levels, fine for the most part in the water, but something we really want to dive deep to look at how it bioaccumulates in the things that everybody's eating. And then DOC is pretty average across the board for all the other water bodies out here. No real concerns.
Cool. Yeah. What does this say? I can't see the screen.
So the different fish that we've got. So the sites that were sampled, Andu 612 and Le Marie
LeMay.
Island. I can't. I barely speak English. I'm so sorry. So the main focus on the fish when we first got it was we were testing for dermal sarcoma virus. We got a positive hit on some of that, although most of the research we've done into that virus, it seems semi-natural. It doesn't seem to have any massive human concerns. It's always safe if you see a fish with like tumors or any kind of deformities to not eat it. It's best to try and remove it from the water body entirely. But nothing we've read on this virus indicates that it has any known risks to humans. Sandy flesh disease, even less so. Doesn't seem to like some government agencies like, yeah, you can eat it completely. If you don't want to eat it, I think it's perfectly reasonable. If you want to get it out of the water body to reduce the amount of that virus that's in the water, but it seems pretty natural based on our initial studies. So now like our real focus, we looked at arsenic in the fish. Doesn't seem to be a factor, so mercury is really the only thing we're looking at heavily with the fish samples, as well as just continue baseline monitoring.
Right. What else we got here? Oh, there you go.
And so all of our findings are based off of 6 fish. It's just 6 fish. That's like
they produce like 10 samples each, right?
yeah, they produce a lot of samples. So like we know a lot about the 6 fish that we got. But that's not a huge pool of data. Now, to be fair, it costs like $90 to $100 to run fish for each fish for mercury. So like, I don't think we need a million fish. We don't need to empty the reservoir and study all the fish. But we definitely probably want to see a few more fish added. And as we get more fish in through like natural like fishing and identification of potentially sick fish, this number will grow and our understanding will grow with it. So a small sample pool right now, but we don't need a massive one. Maybe over the next year, doubling it would probably be good.
Is there sizes included, like small fish to?
We have sizes for all the 6 fish. I don't think it's on these slides, but we've done fork length and full measurements for all the fish. Most of the fish we get, I would call medium to small. And that might be why most of them cleared without really much of a mercury concern. The one big fish we had is the one that was kind of that elevated mercury. So in line with older, larger fish are probably condensing more mercury inside them compared to younger, smaller fish.
And I think this is the last slide, I think, maybe. Yeah. Findings and next steps. What we got for next steps?
So next steps, obviously a continuation of all the monitoring that we're doing. We want to get the loggers back in the spring thaw. We want to keep testing water. Dr. Starr is working on, I'm going to pull liters of water from the reservoir and some from the other drinking sources. And now we're going to do more targeted search on that water. So we did a general search to be like, is there anything dangerous here? We haven't found anything super dangerous in the water. So now we know that like weed killer is a possible concern and some other things are concerns. Now we want to take larger quantities of water and really drill down and like find if there's any problem at all. I'm going to be doing an ice survey this trip up to kind of get an idea of what the ice thickness is doing and how the dam fluctuations is affecting the ice. And then I'm interested in pursuing kind of an erosion study of the reservoir that will combine very well with, I don't know if you've been told about the water ranger kits that KED and Advantage and we are working on, but it's a community effort where there'll be really simple kits that can do a lot of really good ecological monitoring, hopefully targeted mostly at high school age or like students, and go out occasionally and get us really good data from around the lake in a more of a mass effort and more community involvement. And then traditional ecological knowledge collection is a big focus on this trip and going forward, and it's getting a good history of the community to compare to the data that we're collecting. Those are big steps forward unless I'm missing anything.
Oh, I think that's good. It covered a lot of it. Does anybody have any other questions relating to the fish and water quality monitoring program?
So he's asking if it would be the same thing if it's in a smaller lake.
As far as like how we would sample and stuff, we absolutely, it doesn't have to be this reservoir. If there's any other bodies of water around the community or anything that is important or relevant to the community that we have missed or haven't tested, please let us know. We work for you guys, so I'm perfectly happy to go to a different pond or different body of water and do the same kind of tests or different tests. It's entirely based on what you've noticed around you and what you would like to know more about.
She's asking if you can like compare like the big reservoir here and with the smaller lakes, like if there's mercury in the smaller lakes.
Yeah, we can absolutely do that.
The clear water, like, yeah. And then that's to be done, we can test it. Some clear water lakes on the territories where they can be tested. Like
Yeah, we can absolutely get water in those areas and compare.
I heard Kukumville, like Eddie, we were supposed to go in the spring, right? To Eddie.
Yeah, it's that way, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I remember we put a couple spots.
Take some around Canamina.
So I think we can identify some more testing sites
Yeah, absolutely.
in the next visit. Come back up.
It'd probably be best to get to those sites in the spring anyway. That's not where we get our best results.
Yeah, so future testing, you know, like expanded sites, that's all very possible. I think we've identified a couple sites.
The location of those dump cars would also be.
I think that's near Kukumville.
Is that okay? That would be awesome. So
Last time we were maybe gonna go out there. Remember? Yeah, so we're gonna do that coming up. So, anything?
For the amount of mercury that's in the water right now. Because we stay inside the lake and sometimes people get more water for drinking. Is it safe to consume that?
So without filtering the lake water, I would never say it's safe to consume the lake water just as is. Mercury is not the concern though. There's a normal amount of like cyanobacteria and other stuff. There's tapeworms and leeches in the water at completely normal amounts. Nothing that's unusual, but any raw lake has the risk when you drink it raw to be dangerous for human health. So I would always, at a minimum, boil the water, but ideally boiling combined with filtering or any kind of like commercial grade filtering is what I would recommend for drinking out of that reservoir. But the mercury is not a risk. You're not going to get mercury poisoning by drinking it, even unfiltered.
So if they were to buy the filtered, what do you call that? Erosion?
Oh, the Brita filters?
Resna kada ki adjustment the jug and has a filter.
Brita.
The Brita
Any
filter.
household, water,
Filtering.
filtering.
filter.
Is that it?
There's tons of different brands and different types. I would say a Brita filter probably
Yeah,
isn't
Brita
going to get
filter.
to the level that you want. It's more about hard water, making the water more like palatable. It doesn't do a lot of filtering because it's just charcoal, but there is absolutely like consumer grade filters that would make the water perfectly drinkable. I will say that the water coming out of the pump house and out of the well is pretty good.
Yeah, but you got chlorine in there, so. No,
We tested before the chlorine too, right? We got a sample.
Yeah, nothing we've seen suggests the chlorine's at a dangerous level for humans. It seems perfectly normal with treated water, but there is going to be a little bit of chlorine in it with any treated water. But we haven't identified that as a risk. The water that's coming out of the ground well, even before treated, is also looking phenomenal.
Andrew says here, Brita can reduce mercury, copper, and zinc. Allegedly.
Yeah, I know Brita's not rated for like this makes water potable,
Yeah, no, I get it.
but it helps. It doesn't hurt.
Definitely boil the water.
Yeah, boil the water deals with cyanobacteria, and that would honestly probably boil the water Brita. You could probably be pretty close.
Yeah.
And again, statistically, you can probably just drink water out of the lake and be fine. It's just the 1 in 20,
Yeah,
you get the bad thing.
definitely I have. So are there any other points, questions, or concerns?
That's it.
That's it? Good. Andrew or Sarah, do you have anything to add? Or
I just wanted to say thank you everyone for joining and for engaging in this workshop and sharing your concerns. And I just want to give a quick overview to the workshop tomorrow.
okay, yeah.
Workshop tomorrow.
There will be gathering around 9 a.m. Over at the health center. So that'll be further opportunity to continue the group discussion and share your environmental observations. And Mike and Billy will be leading a mapping activity. Maybe Mike can give a little more insight as to how that will look, but that would lead up to lunch. And Billy's going later today to pick up some nice snacks for everyone, some breakfast and some lunch. And then in the afternoon, coordinated with Eddie, will be some one-on-one interviews with community members. And we also have a survey that we would love your input. I've shared the link with the team here, and I will send that through to KED to share on their Facebook page. And we also have a WhatsApp group. If you're interested in joining, please add your phone number at the end of the survey, and I'll make sure that you're added to the WhatsApp group for future posters and keeping informed of our upcoming workshops. We'll do one every quarter, or as the community needs a response. We just echoing what Billy and Mike had said. We're working with you. This is community-led projects, so we're here to support and make sure that we're adapting to your concerns.
Exactly. So Great. I think that sums it up, right?
Like,
Last question. Methylmercury and the presence of herbicide, is it man-made or is it naturally occurring?
the presence of herbicide would most likely be man-made. Methylmercury is oftentimes associated with man-made, but it can exist naturally in the environment. Sorry, can I elaborate at all?
I'm just asking if it's, because right now, we're trying to set what is safe. That is not the question. For me, is why is it there? How can we stop it? That is my question. Like right now, you're telling us, oh, well, don't eat too much fish. That's the only thing we can do. Filter your water.
This lady should just blow up the dam.
That's what I mean. I mean, you're giving us guidelines that are, and it's good, you're giving us guidelines that, you know, benchmarks that says, well, hey, if you don't need this much walleye, you're gonna be okay. You don't drink, if you don't drink as much water from the lake, you're gonna be safe. But why are we having these guidelines set when, if this is not naturally occurring in our system, I mean, in our reservoir, if it's not naturally occurring, then whose fault is it?
Mercury does exist naturally in the soil. Says it's in the soil. It's the problem with mercury is when it gets into the water.
It gets disturbed.
Yeah, so that's why it says logging is a big concern. That's why erosion is a big concern. It says that, but it says we haven't done the studies yet. It says it's in the erosion department. It says, and that's why it says I've never been an advocate for logging. This is because this is they destroy it. Not only did it destroy the environment, they contaminate our water. This is that's why I said they have the rules and regulations where they're not supposed to cut in your lakes. You're not supposed to ride your machines. This is in the water, across creeks and whatnot. There's all those regulations. This is to avoid mercury contamination.
Kadap kanam chubu si alis kuni ben magdan tikenda ne ye that which kudak sagi gen wasa ka tekedi. So kaji kibanga washe mutwe we dispona go ma dwatmo mo mi ma dismete te we boni
Because the one year, and it's kind of the man is on the easy to one.
abisko disem gekedi no mutbes.
It says it happens naturally in the soil. Well, the more on they got such you would have. Me my roads and watch me my road the mercury or gas on even more this.
And this
Well, the more it's still in the water. It exists naturally in the environment. It says it's just that it says what happens it says is when you got erosion, when you got logging, it says you get more. And so then they accumulate more. I said I got a question about this. It says because that amount of mercury is low. But one of the reasons that it could show as low is because the fish that we caught, they sampled, were small. Okay, the bigger the fish get, the higher the mercury levels get because they've been in the water longer. But it says everybody knows it says here it says that the Kabunga Reservoir is exploited to the max when it comes to fishing. So they got boats there all summer long at all the lodges, at all the campgrounds and everything. Those people are fishing the lake constantly. That's a joke. I wrote about it. This is hard. This is for guys that make fishing tournaments to catch big fish. It says, and that's why it says the average of a mercury show as low because this is the fish that you tested. This is our on average smaller.
Because we did this much when we know I'm like I should watch when we
No, it's in the soil.
But what's bringing it into the lake is erosion.
Yeah,
That's what I'm trying to get at. Erosion is caused by Hydro-Québec, because they're the ones that lift the water.
Yeah. This is mercury. It says doesn't like so the example is that I can give you. It says in Montreal. It says they'll tell you. It says like if you fish in front of Montreal, they'll tell you, it says to don't eat fish more than once a week. And the reason why they tell you that is because they got a lot of farming up the river. So they got farms all along the St. Lawrence, all the way to Gatineau River, this is all the way up to the Ottawa River, and all of that mercury accumulates in the river. And this is the reason why there's higher concentrations of mercury in the water over there and in the fish, is because this is all of that land. They scratch the shit out of the land all the time, constantly turning the soil, constantly releasing new deposits of mercury in the water.
I'd argue that their levels are higher than
Yeah,
the reservoir.
yeah, way higher.
Yeah,
Yeah.
substantially.
What if, can it go back to its natural state if there's no, playing with the waters and playing with logging, or will it come back down to?
It's really hard to answer that, and I don't, if Andrew's still on, he may be more qualified, but I can't speak to it if you didn't hear that question.
No, I heard it. Hopefully people can hear me. I mean, one thing that's occurring to me, two thoughts listening to this. First is, what is the natural state of the reservoir? Because isn't the reservoir man-made? What did things look like before the reservoir?
Right.
Rivers.
It was rivers and lakes. So the reason why they call it reservoir, it's an accumulation of rivers and lakes that they dammed off to raise the water.
Also to what contributes to mercury too is the swamp water. Well, that's all swamp waters are all decay and debris, runoff, there's leaves and all that stuff.
Well, it's the lack of oxygen. It's what I was saying earlier in those swamp waters. It's the lack of oxygen that is taking the mercury that is inert, that doesn't do anything,
No,
and it converts it to methylmercury. And that happens in these stagnant
natural
swamp waters. But one of the things that I heard that I think one of the others was saying earlier, I thought was really smart, is there are all these other lakes on the territory. And so one of the easiest ways that we can kind of assess the impact of Hydro-Québec and logging operations would be to go look in the small lakes and see what are the concentrations in fish and in the water in the small lakes that are less impacted by people, and compare the values there to the reservoir.
No, you can extract that one from the soil.
Okay, I'll try to get Mike to parrot that.
Just like that.
Yeah.
So obviously the laptop's a little bit quiet, but a big thing that Dr. Tanentzap mentioned is a good way to compare like what is a normal amount of mercury for this area is to compare the reservoir to the smaller lake bodies that we already discussed wanting to sample. If we look at other bodies of water in the area, we can get a more normalized baseline and determine like, is it elevated for the area? And if it is, that's probably Hydro-Québec or something man-made. If it's not elevated for the area, sometimes things are just naturally elevated. I am inclined to lean towards that there's probably more of a man-made cause. But looking at smaller bodies of water around the reservoir would be how we get to that.
The ones that are not impacted by logging, and of course not impacted by Hydro-Québec. So if we can identify some of those, we can collect water and fish from those and compare them to the situation in the reservoir.
I think it's definitely possible. Just finding new testing sites that aren't impacted by the dam, like lakes that stand alone, or they have an outlet to the reservoir, but they don't have an inlet to the reservoir. So finding anything like that and getting those samples will give a better picture of, I guess, this reservoir's health compared to what existed before, right?
Yeah.
So more testing again. It always leads to, going into year 2 of this program, more testing. And I think it's good. We got a lot of good options here coming up. So regarding testing, does anybody have anything more to add? Any other requests or
I got a
specific
test
sites?
upstream, Jean Perry.
I'm gonna write that down.
Perry to Pagano, and it's not affected by a dam.
Don Perret. Jean?
Yeah.
How do you spell Perret?
P-E-R-E.
Okay. Cool. Okay. Oh, sorry. I was just down. So yeah, does that, I think that's a good summary of all the data collected so far from this program. And I think going into year 2, there's a lot of work that's going to be done, and I guess a lot more things to look at. Right? And we can continue to have these meetings, have these workshops, have these discussions. I think it's great.
Which place of all the water sampling we did as the Mercury?
So they're all really close.
They're all very close. The mercury kind of mixes in. It's like a soup. So it's not going to really stand out, but I can tell you.
Like is in the shallow place or the channels?
So these,
It would be a negligible difference. Let me see if I can bring up
he
the.
has it there. It's just which one.
Yeah.
I would do it like small channel.
Yeah.
So.
The first one that's a main channel. And the third one is another main channel that comes up.
South.
Well,
Fourth one that
That's where the
funny
dam
enough,
is.
the highest rate is Kabunga Beach. So that campground that's down that way just before the.
number 3.
So it'd actually be, it's not even one of these main sites, these areas that we focused on. Kabunga Dam, Kabunga Beach, I believe is right here. That's actually our
They
highest
put
rate,
it like multiple
but
places.
it's negligible. Like, it's not like, oh, don't go in that water. Like, all the water is pretty much the same when it comes to mercury. But the highest rate was at that campsite, which would kind of make sense.
People camping, I guess.
Just below the dam, there's a Kabunga Beach. It's like a
Yeah.
national park campground. That was our highest measurement, but negligible compared. Like, it's all soup. The mercury's just kind of in the water, relatively even dispersal.
I think it's because it's in a bay. It's not, all the places have tested there right now, it's raining channels where the water's continuously flowing. And that's in a bay off to the side.
Yeah.
So it's probably concentrated more in the bay.
I don't think it's a
Less fresh.
factor, but it's a fun tidbit of info.
Probably. Yeah.
do it.
What?
They didn't do.
Yeah.
What about the Warrior Dam? Where is it?
That's the red one.
The red one? Oh,
Yeah.
that's-
No, that's
Oh,
the dam.
The other dam.
Above the green
Or-
one, it's
yeah.
not even on the map.
Warrior's not
Oh.
on the map.
How is that? Is it red like that or is it?
So the
Oh,
colors
they're
don't
just
indicate.
they're just
that-
colors.
Color markers.
Okay, what was
The sampling over there was about the same. If you're looking for mercury explicitly,
is it the same as the Kabunga Dam or is it same as everywhere?
basically the same as everywhere. Nothing stood out in any single site. Like, there's a bunch of mercury here and no mercury over here. It's all kind of, there's differences, but negligible differences.
So more testing. More testing. More loggers. We can change some spots. Like, right now they're cold. So
Yeah. The workshop tomorrow is also a great opportunity if there's more ideas, more thoughts. If you're attending the workshop, that's meant to also be much more of a discussion than like a lecture. So if you think of anything tonight, please let me know tomorrow.
yeah, tomorrow. So I think that's it. People are filing out now.
Thank you for letting me speak.
Okay, I think that's it, Sarah.
So when do you want to go?
Nice work.
I brought all the stuff. I'm gonna go out.
Yeah, thanks for recording. Also,
Probably Thursday.
Great job, guys.
yeah, I think very informative. I learned a lot. I think everybody learned a lot. So
Yeah, thank you for facilitating.
yeah, no problem at all.
How many people were in the room, Billy?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 12, 13. 13 including Mike and I.
Okay.
So 11, I guess. Yeah. Pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's mostly council.
Amazing.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, it's we're coming up on 4 o'clock. I think ending this a little bit early.
Nice.
Does that work? And we can debrief later.
Yeah. Perfect.
Super. All right.
Thanks, Heather. Yeah.